Welcome to the Discourse Analyzer AI Toolkit, where articles come alive. You're listening to the audio version of our article. For the full text and an interactive experience, check out the link in the description below. Interact with any selection using our AI assistant to enhance your understanding. Let's explore.
Global Studies and Discourse Analysis, Critical Perspectives. Global studies and discourse analysis are critical tools for understanding the complex and multifaceted nature of global interactions. However, these approaches are not without their critiques and challenges. This essay explores critical perspectives on discourse analysis within global studies, focusing on critiques of Eurocentrism, gaps in representation from the Global South, challenges in empirically validating discourse analyses, and the subjectivity involved in interpreting global discourses. 1. Critiques of Eurocentrism in global studies discourse. Eurocentrism in global studies refers to the tendency to view the world from a European or Western perspective, often marginalizing or misrepresenting non-Western cultures, histories, and experiences. Critiques of Eurocentrism are crucial in global studies discourse as they seek to deconstruct these biases and promote a more inclusive, diverse, and accurate understanding of global issues. Understanding Eurocentrism. Eurocentrism is the belief in the inherent superiority of European culture and its descendants, often manifested through the privileging of European historical experiences, values, and perspectives over those of other cultures. This bias influences how global phenomena are studied, interpreted, and understood, leading to a skewed representation of world history, politics, and culture. Key critiques of Eurocentrism. 1. Historical distortion. One of the primary critiques is that Eurocentrism distorts global history by emphasizing European achievements while downplaying or ignoring contributions from other regions. Selective histories. Eurocentric narratives often highlight European colonization and industrialization as the pinnacle of human progress, while minimizing the histories of empires, civilizations, and innovations from Asia, Africa, and the Americas. Colonial legacies. These narratives tend to justify colonialism by portraying it as a civilizing mission, overlooking the exploitation, violence, and cultural erasure inflicted on colonized peoples. 2. Marginalization of non-Western knowledge. Eurocentrism marginalizes non-Western epistemologies, philosophies, and ways of knowing, privileging Western scientific and intellectual traditions. Epistemic injustice. This marginalization leads to epistemic injustice, where the knowledge systems of indigenous and non-Western peoples are undervalued or excluded from academic and policy-making processes. Knowledge hierarchies. Eurocentrism creates hierarchies of knowledge that deem Western knowledge as universal and superior, while other forms of knowledge are seen as particular or inferior. 3. Cultural stereotyping and othering. Eurocentric discourses often rely on stereotypes and the othering of non-European cultures, portraying them as exotic, backward, or undeveloped. Orientalism. Building on Edward Said's concept of Orientalism, critics argue that Eurocentric representations of the Orient, Middle East, Asia, construct these regions as fundamentally different and inferior, justifying Western dominance and intervention. Cultural homogenization. Eurocentrism tends to homogenize diverse cultures, ignoring intracultural differences and the dynamic nature of cultures outside the West. 4. Impact on global studies and policy. Eurocentric perspectives influence global studies scholarship and international policymaking, often leading to biased research agendas and policy solutions. Research bias. Eurocentric biases shape research questions, methodologies, and interpretations, leading to a limited understanding of global issues that fails to consider diverse perspectives and experiences. Policy implications. International policies informed by Eurocentric discourses may impose Western models of development, governance, and human rights, which may not be suitable or effective in non-Western contexts. Scholars and perspectives critiquing Eurocentrism. Edward Said. Orientalism. Said's seminal work, Orientalism, critiques how Western scholarship and media have constructed an exoticized and inferior image of the East, reinforcing colonial power dynamics and cultural stereotypes. Dipesh Chakrabarty. Provincializing Europe. Chakrabarty's work argues for provincializing Europe, meaning that European thought should be seen as one among many, rather than the universal standard. He advocates for recognizing the plurality of histories and epistemologies. Gayatri Chakravorty Spivak. Subaltern Studies. Spivak's work in subaltern studies focuses on the voices and perspectives of those marginalized by colonial and post-colonial structures. She critiques how mainstream discourse often ignores or silences these voices. Ngugi wa Thiong'o. Decolonizing the mind. Ngugi emphasizes the importance of cultural and linguistic decolonization, advocating for the use of indigenous languages and cultural frameworks in education and scholarship. Methodologies to address Eurocentrism. Postcolonial studies. Critical examination. Postcolonial studies critically examine the legacies of colonialism and challenge Eurocentric narratives by highlighting the contributions and perspectives of formerly colonized peoples. Decolonial methods. These include using indigenous languages, valuing oral traditions, and incorporating non-Western theoretical frameworks. Global South perspectives. Inclusive scholarship. Scholars from the Global South provide alternative perspectives that challenge dominant Eurocentric paradigms, promoting more inclusive and representative global studies. Local contexts. Emphasizing the importance of local contexts and knowledge systems in understanding global phenomena. Transnational feminism. Intersectionality. Transnational feminism addresses the intersections of race, gender, class, and colonialism, challenging Eurocentric feminist narratives that often overlook the experiences of women in the Global South. Global solidarity. Promoting solidarity and collaboration across borders to address global gender inequalities. Critiques of Eurocentrism in global studies discourse are essential for creating a more accurate, inclusive, and equitable understanding of global issues. By challenging the dominance of Western perspectives and highlighting the contributions and experiences of non-Western cultures, scholars can promote a more diverse and representative global studies field. Methodologies like postcolonial studies, global South perspectives, and transnational feminism provide valuable tools for deconstructing Eurocentric biases and advancing a more just and pluralistic approach to global studies. 2. Gaps in representation from the Global South in global discourses. Representation from the Global South in global discourses is often limited or skewed, leading to a number of significant gaps. These gaps perpetuate inequalities in knowledge production, policymaking, and cultural recognition. Addressing these gaps is crucial for achieving a more balanced and inclusive global dialogue. Key areas of representation gaps. 1. Knowledge production and academia. Scholars and institutions from the Global South are underrepresented in academic publications, conferences, and research funding. Publication bias. Major academic journals and conferences are often dominated by scholars from the Global North, with research from the Global South underrepresented or marginalized. Research funding. Funding for research is disproportionately allocated to institutions in the Global North, limiting the capacity for scholars in the Global South to conduct and publish their research. Epistemic exclusion. Non-Western epistemologies and methodologies are often undervalued or ignored in global academic discourse, leading to a dominance of Western frameworks and perspectives. 2. Media representation. Global media coverage tends to focus on issues and perspectives from the Global North, often portraying the Global South through a limited and sometimes stereotypical lens. Stereotyping. Media representations of the Global South frequently rely on stereotypes, depicting these regions as perpetually poor, conflict-ridden, or exotic. Crisis coverage. When the Global South is covered in the media, it is often in the context of crises, e.g., natural disasters, conflicts, rather than showcasing diverse aspects of life and achievements. Voices and narratives. The voices of people from the Global South are often underrepresented in global media, with narratives being framed by journalists and experts from the Global North. 3. Policy and decision-making. Global South countries and their representatives often have limited influence in international policy-making and governance. Institutional power. International institutions such as the United Nations, World Bank, and International Monetary Fund are often dominated by the interests and perspectives of powerful countries from the Global North. Negotiation margins. In international negotiations, e.g., climate change, trade agreements, the priorities and concerns of the Global South are frequently overshadowed by the agendas of more powerful nations. Development policies. Development policies and programs are often designed without adequate input from the Global South, leading to solutions that may not be suitable or effective for local contexts. Point 4. Cultural recognition. Cultural contributions from the Global South are often marginalized or appropriated without proper recognition and respect. Cultural hegemony. The global cultural landscape is dominated by Western cultural products and standards, leading to the marginalization of non-Western cultures. Intellectual property. Cultural and intellectual contributions from the Global South are sometimes appropriated without fair compensation or acknowledgement. Representation in arts and literature. Artists, writers, and cultural producers from the Global South often face barriers to entry in global markets and platforms, limiting their visibility and influence. Addressing the representation gaps. Point 1. Decolonizing academia. Inclusive curriculum. Developing curricula that include and prioritize scholarship from the Global South. Equitable publishing practices. Encouraging academic journals to adopt more inclusive publishing practices, such as special issues focused on Global South perspectives and providing support for scholars from underrepresented regions. Funding and collaboration. Increasing funding for research in the Global South and promoting international research collaborations that respect and value the contributions of all partners. Point 2. Reforming media practices. Diverse voices. Encouraging media organizations to include more voices from the Global South in their coverage and to tell stories from diverse perspectives. Ethical reporting. Promoting ethical reporting practices that avoid stereotypes and provide nuanced, respectful coverage of the Global South. Training and opportunities. Providing training and opportunities for journalists from the Global South to work in international media organizations. Point 3. Enhancing policy influence. Institutional reform. Advocating for reforms in international institutions to ensure more equitable representation and influence for countries from the Global South. Inclusive negotiations. Ensuring that international negotiations and policy-making processes are inclusive and consider the priorities and concerns of all stakeholders. Empowering local solutions. Designing development policies and programs in partnership with local communities, respecting their knowledge and leadership. Point 4. Promoting cultural equity. Cultural exchange programs. Supporting cultural exchange programs that highlight and celebrate the diversity of the Global South. Protecting intellectual property. Ensuring fair compensation and acknowledgement for cultural and intellectual contributions from the Global South. Amplifying voices. Providing platforms and opportunities for artists, writers, and cultural producers from the Global South to reach global audiences. Addressing the gaps in representation from the Global South in global discourses is essential for creating a more equitable and inclusive world. By decolonizing academia, reforming media practices, enhancing policy influence, and promoting cultural equity, we can ensure that the voices, perspectives, and contributions of the Global South are recognized and valued. This not only enriches global discourses but also fosters greater understanding, cooperation, and justice in addressing global challenges. 3. Challenges in empirically validating discourse analyses in global studies. Empirically validating discourse analyses in global studies poses significant challenges due to the nature of discourse itself, the methodologies employed, and the contexts in which discourse occurs. Discourse analysis is inherently qualitative and interpretive, which introduces complexities when attempting to achieve empirical validation. Here are some of the key challenges and potential strategies to address them. Key challenges. Point 1. Subjectivity and interpretation. Discourse analysis involves interpreting language, texts, and communication practices, which can be highly subjective. Different analysts may arrive at different conclusions based on their perspectives, theoretical frameworks, and biases. Intersubjectivity. Achieving intersubjectivity, or shared understanding among researchers, is difficult because interpretations can vary widely. Analyst bias. Researchers' own cultural, political, and social backgrounds can influence their analysis, potentially leading to biased interpretations. Point 2. Contextual variability. Discourse is context-dependent, meaning that the same language or text can have different meanings in different contexts. This variability complicates the process of validating findings across different settings and times. Contextual nuances. Understanding the specific cultural, historical, and social context in which a discourse occurs is crucial but often challenging. Generalizability. Findings from discourse analysis in one context may not be easily generalizable to other contexts. Point 3. Complexity of discourse. Discourse is complex and multifaceted, involving not just language but also power relations, social practices, and institutional structures. This complexity makes it difficult to isolate variables and apply empirical validation methods typically used in quantitative research. Multi-layered nature. Discourse analysis often needs to account for multiple layers of meaning, including literal, metaphorical, and ideological. Interaction with power. Discourse is deeply intertwined with power dynamics, which are not easily quantifiable or empirically validated. Point 4. Methodological rigor. Ensuring methodological rigor in discourse analysis can be challenging, particularly in establishing clear, replicable procedures and criteria for analysis. Analytical frameworks. The lack of standardized frameworks for discourse analysis can lead to inconsistent methods and findings. Replicability. Replicating discourse analyses is difficult because it often involves nuanced and context-specific interpretation. Potential strategies for addressing these challenges. Point 1. Triangulation. Using multiple methods, data sources, and theoretical perspectives to cross-validate findings can enhance the credibility and robustness of discourse analysis. Methodological triangulation. Combining discourse analysis with other qualitative methods, e.g., ethnography, interviews, and quantitative methods, e.g., content analysis, surveys, to validate findings. Data triangulation. Using diverse data sources, e.g., texts, media, interviews, to corroborate interpretations. Point 2. Transparency and reflexivity. Maintaining transparency in the research process and being reflexive about one's own biases and assumptions can improve the rigor and validity of discourse analysis. Detailed documentation. Providing detailed documentation of the analytical process, including coding schemes, interpretive steps, and contextual information. Reflexive practice. Reflecting on and disclosing the researcher's positionality, potential biases, and their impact on the analysis. Point 3. Peer review and collaboration. Engaging with peers through review and collaborative analysis can provide critical feedback and help mitigate subjective biases. Peer review. Submitting analyses to rigorous peer review to ensure that interpretations are scrutinized and validated by other experts in the field. Collaborative analysis. Working with co-researchers or interdisciplinary teams to bring diverse perspectives and reduce individual bias. Point 4. Iterative process. Adopting an iterative approach to analysis, where preliminary findings are continuously refined through further data collection and analysis, can enhance validity. Iterative coding. Revising and refining coding schemes and interpretations as new data is collected and analyzed. Feedback loops. Incorporating feedback from participants and stakeholders into the analysis process to validate interpretations. Point 5. Case study method. Using case studies to provide in-depth, context-rich analysis can help illustrate the validity of discourse analysis findings in specific settings. Thick description. Providing detailed, context-rich descriptions that capture the complexities of the discourse being analyzed. Comparative case studies. Conducting comparative case studies to identify patterns and differences across contexts, enhancing the robustness of findings. Empirically validating discourse analyses in global studies involves navigating significant challenges related to subjectivity, contextual variability, complexity, and methodological rigor. By employing strategies such as triangulation, transparency, peer review, iterative processes, and case study methods, researchers can enhance the credibility and robustness of their findings. These approaches help address the inherent complexities of discourse analysis, allowing for a more nuanced and empirically grounded understanding of global discourses. 4. Subjectivity in interpreting global discourses. Subjectivity is an inherent aspect of interpreting global discourses in global studies and discourse analysis. Given that discourse analysis is a qualitative and interpretive method, researchers' backgrounds, perspectives, and biases can significantly influence their interpretations. Understanding and addressing subjectivity is crucial for ensuring the rigor and credibility of discourse analysis. Nature of subjectivity in discourse analysis. Point 1. Interpretive nature. Discourse analysis involves interpreting language, symbols, and communication practices, which are inherently subjective processes. Different analysts may derive different meanings from the same text based on their interpretive frameworks. Point 2. Researcher positionality. The positionality of the researcher, including their cultural, social, and political background, can shape how they interpret discourses. This includes their perspectives, experiences, and biases, which influence the focus, questions, and conclusions of their analysis. Point 3. Context dependence. The meaning of discourses is context dependent, and understanding these contexts requires subjective judgment. Analysts must consider historical, cultural, social, and political contexts, which are often complex and multifaceted. Addressing subjectivity in discourse analysis. Point 1. Reflexivity. Reflexivity involves researchers being aware of and critically reflecting on their own positionality and biases throughout the research process. This includes acknowledging how their background influences their interpretations and being transparent about these influences. Self-reflection. Researchers should regularly reflect on their own assumptions, values, and biases, and consider how these may affect their analysis. Transparency. Clearly documenting and disclosing the researcher's positionality, including their theoretical and methodological choices, helps enhance the credibility of the analysis. Point 2. Triangulation. Triangulation involves using multiple methods, data sources, or theoretical perspectives to cross-check and validate findings. This can help mitigate the impact of individual biases and provide a more comprehensive understanding of the discourse. Methodological triangulation. Combining discourse analysis with other qualitative or quantitative methods, e.g., ethnography, surveys, to validate interpretations. Data triangulation. Using diverse data sources, e.g., texts, interviews, media, to corroborate findings and provide a richer analysis. 3. Peer review and collaboration. Engaging with other researchers through peer review and collaborative analysis can provide critical feedback and help identify and address subjective biases. Peer review. Submitting findings to rigorous peer review to ensure that interpretations are scrutinized and validated by other experts in the field. Collaborative analysis. Working with co-researchers or interdisciplinary teams to bring diverse perspectives and reduce individual bias. Point 4. Detailed documentation. Providing detailed documentation of the research process, including coding schemes, interpretive steps, and contextual information, enhances the transparency and replicability of the analysis. Thick description. Offering rich, detailed descriptions of the context, data, and analytical process to provide a clear rationale for interpretations. Audit trail. Maintaining an audit trail that documents all decisions and changes made during the research process, allowing others to follow and understand the analysis. Point 5. Iterative analysis. Adopting an iterative approach to analysis, where preliminary findings are continuously refined through further data collection and analysis, can help ensure the robustness of interpretations. Iterative coding. Revising and refining coding schemes and interpretations as new data is collected and analyzed. Feedback loops. Incorporating feedback from participants and stakeholders into the analysis process to validate interpretations and ensure they are grounded in the data. Examples of subjectivity in interpreting global discourses. Example 1. Media representations of migration. Researcher bias. A researcher's political views on immigration might influence how they interpret media narratives about migrants, potentially leading to biased conclusions. Contextual interpretation. Understanding media representations of migration requires considering the political, social, and cultural context of the media outlet, which involves subjective judgment. Example 2. International policy discourses. Positionality. Analysts' national backgrounds can influence their interpretations of international policy discourses, such as differing views on climate change policies based on their country's economic interests. Complex contexts. Interpreting policy documents involves understanding complex geopolitical contexts, which can vary widely and require nuanced, subjective interpretation. Subjectivity is an inevitable aspect of interpreting global discourses in global studies and discourse analysis. However, by employing strategies such as reflexivity, triangulation, peer review, detailed documentation, and iterative analysis, researchers can address and manage the influence of subjectivity. These approaches enhance the rigor, credibility, and transparency of discourse analysis, allowing for more robust and nuanced interpretations of global discourses. Acknowledging and critically engaging with subjectivity not only strengthens the analytical process but also contributes to a deeper and more inclusive understanding of global issues. Conclusion. While global studies and discourse analysis offer valuable insights into the power dynamics and narratives shaping our world, they are also subject to significant critiques and challenges. Addressing issues of Eurocentrism, enhancing representation from the Global South, improving empirical validation methods, and acknowledging the inherent subjectivity in interpreting discourses are essential steps toward more inclusive and robust analyses. By critically engaging with these perspectives, scholars can contribute to a more equitable and comprehensive understanding of global phenomena. Frequently asked questions. What are some critiques of Eurocentrism in global studies discourse? Critiques of Eurocentrism in global studies discourse argue that this perspective prioritizes European and Western experiences, values, and epistemologies, often marginalizing or ignoring non-Western viewpoints. This bias can lead to a distorted understanding of global issues, reinforcing power imbalances and perpetuating a colonial mindset. Scholars advocate for more inclusive approaches that recognize and incorporate diverse perspectives from around the world. How does Eurocentrism affect the study of global issues? Eurocentrism affects the study of global issues by framing them through a Western lens, often emphasizing Western norms and solutions. This can result in a limited and skewed analysis that fails to address the complexities and realities of non-Western contexts. It also risks imposing Western models and solutions that may not be appropriate or effective in different cultural and socio-economic settings. What are the gaps in representation from the Global South in global discourses? Gaps in representation from the Global South in global discourses include underrepresentation of voices, perspectives, and knowledge systems from these regions. This imbalance often leads to a dominance of narratives shaped by the Global North, which can misrepresent or overlook the experiences and contributions of the Global South. Addressing these gaps requires amplifying Southern voices and ensuring diverse viewpoints are included in global conversations. Why is representation from the Global South important in global studies? Representation from the Global South is important in global studies to ensure a comprehensive and balanced understanding of global issues. It brings diverse perspectives and insights that enrich analyses and contribute to more equitable and effective solutions. Including voices from the Global South helps challenge dominant narratives and address power imbalances in global discourse. What are the challenges in empirically validating discourse analyses? Challenges in empirically validating discourse analyses include the subjective nature of interpreting language and meaning, the difficulty in quantifying qualitative data, and the potential for researcher bias. Ensuring rigor and reliability in discourse analysis often involves triangulating data from multiple sources, using systematic coding schemes, and being transparent about the analytical process and interpretive frameworks used. How can researchers address the challenges of empirically validating discourse analyses? Researchers can address these challenges by employing mixed method approaches that combine qualitative and quantitative data, using software tools for systematic coding and analysis, and engaging in reflexive practices to acknowledge and mitigate their own biases. Peer review and collaboration can also enhance the validity and reliability of discourse analyses. How does subjectivity impact the interpretation of global discourses? Subjectivity impacts the interpretation of global discourses by influencing how researchers understand and analyze language, context, and meaning. Personal biases, cultural backgrounds, and theoretical orientations can shape interpretations, potentially leading to different conclusions. Recognizing and reflecting on this subjectivity is crucial to ensure a nuanced and balanced analysis. What strategies can researchers use to manage subjectivity in discourse analysis? Strategies to manage subjectivity in discourse analysis include maintaining reflexivity, using systematic coding and analysis procedures, engaging in collaborative research to cross-check interpretations, and being transparent about one's positionality and potential biases. Triangulating findings with multiple data sources and perspectives can also help ensure more objective and robust conclusions. Why is it important to critique Eurocentrism in global studies discourse? Critiquing Eurocentrism in global studies discourse is important to promote a more inclusive and accurate understanding of global issues. It helps deconstruct biased narratives, highlight diverse perspectives, and address historical and ongoing power imbalances. Such critiques encourage the development of more equitable and culturally sensitive approaches in global research and policymaking. How can discourse analysis contribute to addressing gaps in representation from the Global South? Discourse analysis can contribute to addressing gaps in representation from the Global South by highlighting and amplifying marginalized voices, analyzing how global narratives are constructed and who they privilege, and challenging dominant discourses that exclude or misrepresent Southern perspectives. By critically examining global texts and communications, researchers can advocate for more inclusive and representative discourses. What are some examples of dominant narratives from the Global North that can be challenged through discourse analysis? Examples of dominant narratives from the Global North that can be challenged through discourse analysis include the portrayal of development as a linear process towards Western-style modernization, the framing of climate change solutions predominantly through technological and market-based approaches, and the depiction of non-Western societies as inherently backward or in need of Western intervention. How can inclusive discourse analysis practices improve global studies research? Inclusive discourse analysis practices can improve global studies research by ensuring a more comprehensive and diverse range of perspectives, fostering critical reflection on power dynamics, and promoting more equitable research practices. These practices can lead to richer, more nuanced analyses and more effective and culturally sensitive solutions to global challenges. What role do critical perspectives play in discourse analysis? Critical perspectives play a vital role in discourse analysis by questioning and deconstructing power structures, ideologies, and biases embedded in language and communication. They encourage researchers to look beyond surface meanings and explore the deeper social, political, and cultural implications of discourse, ultimately contributing to more just and equitable knowledge production. How can discourse analysis help in promoting social justice and equity? Discourse analysis can help promote social justice and equity by revealing and challenging the ways in which language perpetuates inequalities, stereotypes, and exclusion. By critically examining and deconstructing dominant discourses, researchers can advocate for more inclusive and fair representations and contribute to the development of policies and practices that address systemic injustices. What future directions can global studies and discourse analysis take to address current critiques and challenges? Future directions for global studies and discourse analysis include embracing more interdisciplinary and cross-cultural research approaches, increasing collaboration with scholars from the Global South, adopting more rigorous and transparent analytical methods, and focusing on the practical implications of research for policy and practice. Additionally, continuing to critically engage with and challenge dominant narratives will be essential for advancing the field.